okay? Yes.
Yes.
We can't see you, but...
No.
Yeah. Hey, good.
There's some people there, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I think we can start.
Yes.
Thank you all for coming. I believe this is the first event of the festival. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
No film has been screened, but we have 2 guests of honor with us today. It's a great pleasure to have these wonderful humanist filmmakers from Norway, our cousin from Norway, Joachim, and a distant cousin from Denmark and France, Mia Hansen-Løve. They're both fresh out with new films that were screened in Cannes this summer, right, in the main competition. Mia with Bergman Island and Joachim with The Worst Person in the World, which is also the opening film of this festival. And they're both here to receive an award for their artistic excellence in cinema. And so, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I mean, Asa and I have been watching your films and discussing that, there are quite a lot of things, that you have in common, but at the same time, you're very different filmmakers.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yes, absolutely. And I think one of the things that I find so compelling about both of your films, or both of your bodies of work, rather, is this, this feeling that human beings do things for mysterious reasons, and you're there to try to catch the mystery, as opposed to maybe trying to, be too concerned with plot or, imposing like a bigger plot onto things. There's also like a refreshing lack of moralism in the stories, and I find it to be really, so much just about, it's very existential cinema in the sense that it's so much just about the everyday struggle of what it is to be a human being, and the abstract nature of our emotional lives also, which I don't think maybe sometimes fits into the hero's journey model, but it's because it's so much more abstract and fluid in a sense. I'm curious actually to know with both of you, what is it about cinema that, if you, well, do you consider yourselves to be existentialist filmmakers, and what is it about the cinematic medium that, how is cinema a good medium to tell those kind of stories? If we start with you, Mia.
I was hoping you would start.
Great question, but a big one, huh?
Yeah, sorry.
No.
Well, thanks for what you have been saying. I actually feel the same about your cinema. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say about my cinema, but at least about what I'm trying to do. When you speak about some kind of existentialism or humanism, I do feel that these are the notions I'm the most sensitive to. Maybe it has to do with the fact that both of my parents were philosophy teachers, and I never wanted to become a philosophy teacher. I never felt any talent for philosophy, but I do think some of the values I grew up with, like for instance the quest for truth and the humanism you were talking about, these values somehow found their ways into my cinema. And yes, just as you said, to me films are about making portraits of people, and they are about trying to capture what my experience of life is. It's very simple. And that means they cannot be demonstrative, because if you are to be honest about how life is for you, life is not a demonstration. It's the unknown. It doesn't mean there is no direction. It's a quest. It's a constant quest, but it's not. It cannot be like what scripts are supposed to be if you read the books about script writing. It means I have to find my own language, my own rhythm. I have to define my own rules according to the values that brought me to making films. And I think it's what I'm very why I feel so connected to the films of Joachim is that I think even though with his own in his own way, with his own language, which is quite different from mine, I can still find the same kind of quest in his films that is not a conventional one, I think.
I feel, I also feel very, not only connected, but almost a sense of homeliness in Mia's work. So it's quite fun for us to be allowed to sit and talk about our movies together, which we haven't done so much. I feel very identified with what you just said in the terms of I'm also curious about human portraits. Yes. I don't feel that I come to movies to make dramaturgical perfection. You know, that's not what I'm about. I come also from growing up with music, and all the bands that my friends were having was all about finding their own style or their own phrasing, creating a form of your own temperament. So that stylistic approach of doing cinema as something personal, where it's not only about having the characters wear cool shoes that you also wear or something. It's not on that simple level. It's more about your priority of time and focus in the story that you're telling and the moments. And what I feel is quite similar. I agree, we have different languages, you and I, but I do feel that I'm always very moved by your ability to talk about the biggest things in the smallest events, in a way. I think that is an ideal that you achieve that I admire very much, and I'm very curious to explore as well, is you know, how time shapes us. And that brings us into that existential thing. It's always, I'm Norwegian, so I always admire the honesty of the French in talking for real about what you're doing. In Norway, I'm always ashamed in Scandinavian context. Like, if people ask me, are you an existential? I'm like, oh, existential, I don't know. But yes, let me be honest, now that I'm on stage with such a wonderful filmmaker, I do care about that stuff. I do care about how short life is and how meaningless it can seem, or how we're struggling to find purpose, and those are existential questions. Yes. So surely, yes, that's what I care about. And
you are, Joachim.
yes, I am. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. That's what I do. And I find it. No, that's it. But I also find that, talking of character, that I'm constantly, why cinema, you ask? So. First of all, I don't have an option. I'm not a great writer. I can't paint. You know, I play drums in the punk band and they kicked me out. You know, I suck at everything else. So movies is a place where I could express myself, and I have done it since I was a kid. Yeah. And ultimately, maybe to start a different place, I went to Sweden at a seminar. And there was different people talking, and there was a woman speaking about research she had done about children making movies, like in kindergarten, really small children that were like 4 or 5 years old. And she had given them cameras, and she had said, what story do you want to tell? And the kids were completely confused. Story, what is that, you know? And then after a week, it was like a crisis. They didn't film anything. And then she said, what do you want to show me? And suddenly all the kids were like running around the camera. One, she told, had said, my camera is a mouse I once saw. And the mouse is behaving like this. And someone else showed a secret place in the kindergarten, like a corner. This is my favorite corner. I want to show you something I found exciting, or something they found to be theirs. And I realized, listening to this woman, that's what I care about, showing you something. I don't know quite what it is, but I care about it. I care about my city or these people. And I want to show it. It's just maybe it's a childish notion, then. But you know what I mean.
But I think that's all what cinema is about. At least for me, showing. And when you say showing, I guess it also has to do with remembering. While you put it in the present, remembering doesn't mean necessarily look at the past, but creating or recreating a character present that will kind of stay forever. It can sound naive, but I think. All of my films I made with that kind of naivety, that the reason why they were here was because I wanted people to remember that particular figure or portrait, a person or moment in life or feeling. It's not necessarily remembering a specific person. It can be also an emotion, a moment in life. But to me, it really has to do in the most simple way with the desire or the need, the necessity of capturing something in order to not let them disappear in the chaos of life. So it's about what you choose to remember, what you choose to show, what is most important for you to give a frame to, so that it won't disappear. I really grew up with that, as a teenager at least, with that kind of obsession of the passing of time and how it destroys everything. And I guess that's what we call melancholy. Or, but I really grew up with that, and to me, making film was like the best way I could find. And just as you said,
to hold on.
To hold on and to fight against the disappearance of things and of people. We all had people, we all lost people in our families, and that's a very banal thing, but for me, making film was really the best way I could find to kind of resist to that and make sure there were some things that would stay here forever, that people could still see after the real people were gone. And just as you said, I think good reason, or is it a bad one, I don't know, but why many filmmakers became filmmakers is because they didn't know what else to do. And for me, I think my best chance was that I felt like there was nothing else I knew how to do. I tried to be a writer, but I was a very bad one. I mean, I didn't know how to write, or I didn't like what I was writing. I wish I would be a painter, because I always felt more as a painter. I mean, in terms of the kind of inspiration I have, but I don't know at all how to draw, how to paint. So I think I became a filmmaker because at some point it seemed to me like that it was the one thing I maybe knew how to do, strangely enough, because it's not so easy too, but still there was something about it that I felt at home with.
That's very interesting. I just have to say that I really identify with what she's saying about holding on and that memory thing. And I think a distinction where I admire you very much between our work is that you set out directly when you make your films, some of your films, many of them, you say that you are actually basing it on reality. An example, the father of my children is somehow inspired and based on Hubert Balsan, the French film producer who took his own life. L'Avenir, you say, is based on your mother, Eden. All these wonderful films. It is also based on your brother. And I find that admirable. I work in a more indirect way, but I'm extremely... So here's the question, if I may. So I'm really curious, because I work, maybe I'm more, again, this is the Scandinavian shame. I mean, I started making my first film, Reprise, I was writing it with my best friend Eskil Vogt, and we still work together, and the first film we made was about two young men wanting to be artists, writers. And they were very scared of losing their friendship. They were worried that one was going to be more successful than the other. And when everyone asked us during PR, like selling the film afterwards, like, is this based on you? We're like, no, not at all. And, you know. But then I learned that I was revealing myself, and that the thing people were telling me back about the film were very personal things that I actually also felt. Those were my worries, my conflicts, and Eskil's. And I slowly realized that I was actually, and I still do this, I actually make extremely personal films, but I'm almost too shy to make it directly. So my question to you is, like, I'm sure something with fiction and reality must be slipping regardless. I mean, I'm sure you don't, you want to share a little bit about how you approach that process?
Yeah. Well, first, I want to say that it's quite ironical, because I understand what you say, but to me, being so sincere or transparent about how close my films are to my life was never a strength of my cinema. I always felt it as being some kind of handicap. I feel ashamed of saying so, but it's like I feel I cannot really lie about it, because it's maybe too obvious. I mean, when I make Things to Come, which is a film about a philosophy teacher losing pretty much everything that was part of her life. It was obvious. I mean, my mother was a philosophy teacher, and people knew that. So I felt it would have been a lie, or to say, oh no, it's it's just by accident. She happens to be, And so I felt I had to be sincere about it. But I always felt it as being a handicap, the fact that all of my films are so much drawn from my everyday life in a sometimes pretty much obvious way. And I wish I could do films that would express the same kind of feelings and things, but where I would be able to make out stories where there would be more of reinvention than what I actually do. For instance, again, Things to Come, I think it's an interesting example, because when I wanted to write it, at first I wasn't sure the woman should be a philosophy teacher, and I spent a lot of time asking myself if I could change her job into something else to make the character more different than to my mother than she ended up being. And but to me, it really felt like a betrayal, because not that reality is so sacred that I would think that only you have to stick to it and that it's the only way to find the truth. I don't believe that at all. But just because of the meaning of it, in this case, for instance, the fact that she was connected to book and to the quest for of wisdom, was to me was really part of what she was and what would help her find her way out ultimately. So I couldn't change it into something more, I don't know, banal or less spiritual. For instance, it had to be connected to this spiritual dimension. And so that's why I ended up sticking to the job that was my mother's job. But again, to me, it's not an advantage. It's more of a limit. To me, it's a limit of my cinema, and I just have to do with it and try to make the best out of it. But it's not something I'm so proud of, actually.
I perceive it as bravery. Yeah. So to me, it's very
it's
different.
because you're the other way around.
I'm too shy, maybe.
And what's the relationship with the people around you that?
Well, fortunately, it's rather good, but it's still that also is still a question. I mean, of course, I'm always worried about how they would perceive it. But then, the thing is, since my very first film, I made film inspired by my everyday life, so they ended up having to accept it. But just one last thing to answer what you were asking me about. It's still there. Now I was talking of the fact that how close it was, but at the same time, yes, I think that there is actually reinvention, and it's really close to my own life in terms of what's inside, really, of the interiority of it. But actually, when you talk really about the facts, it's much more different than what it seems to be now when you hear me. But for instance, Bergman Island. Everybody thinks that it's such an autobiographical film, and it's not at the end, because I never was there with the father of my child. When I wrote the script, I was there alone, for instance, so it was a totally different experience.
So people have started to make up or read meaning into it that doesn't really exist.
Sorry?
I mean, people have started to assume that it's more personal than it really is.
No, it is extremely personal, but not necessarily in the literal way. It doesn't mean, but it's my fault if people think that now. It's because I've been the first one to say, yes, it's, But for instance, Father of My Children, yes, it was inspired by this French film producer who was going to produce my first feature, and he died, and he committed suicide, and that inspired the film, obviously. But then, I didn't know anything about his personal life when I wrote the film. I didn't try to find out. So all that I was telling in the film was things I was imagining still. And on the other hand, I think why I made the film is also because it connected with my own personal family story, because my grandfather, who I never met, committed suicide in a context that was pretty similar than the one of Father of My Children. So I guess for me, making this film was also a way to to meditate about my own family story. So what I mean is that it's always much more complicated than what it looks like from the surface.
No,
How do you get your inspiration from? How do you transform it into a fiction?
Into fiction? I think it happens very much through trying to find a formal approach. Like, and when I say form, that sounds very distant, but it's an example. It could be moments and scenes that I want to do of a sort of sensory cinematic quality, and then I realize slowly through the characters that, oh my God, you know, this is what I'm making a film about. And very often there are so many different things happening at once that I don't have control over. When I sit and write with Eskil, we're very good friends, and we talk a lot. We talk sometimes for a year before we realize what we really want the film to be. And by then we have so many notes, and lots of them are sort of scenes or concepts that we want to show visually. But the character material could also be questions. It could be someone else combined with myself. It could be a moment where we realize that in that moment the character is really truthful, and then that springs out. So it's very messy. It's extremely messy. And therefore, when I finish the film and I talk to people in a context like this, or people that come to me and talk about the film, then I start realizing what it is that I have been dealing with. And it often happens retrospectively. But it's changed a bit with the years. I've become more aware of this process. My last film, The Worst Person in the World, I've been more aware of its direct and indirect ways of relating to my life and my experience. But it's a good exercise in consoling yourself with people around you to have to ask subjective questions about them. Okay? So I try to put myself into all the characters to create a situation of where we don't have antagonists. Everyone's always saying that we should be chasing conflict. And to put salt on the food. And it's a very simple trick. And the difficult trick is to create stories where everyone does their best, but it still becomes very full of conflict, like I find life. Like in any relationship with parent and child, or people that engage in romantic relationships or friendships, it's messy, it's difficult, and people try their best, and it's those things that inspire me. And it's kind of consoling to jump over the fence and to learn that now I made a film about love, and you know, I've been hurt. I have hurt people. I have had age gaps or not in a relationship. I have wanted to avoid having a child in a relationship. I have wanted to have a child in a relationship and not had it. And you know, and to be able to then have characters, and you probably haven't seen my new film, but then jumping between characters is very liberating. But then at the end of the day, there are also very personal things.
But I do think what you mentioned is a crucial dimension of your cinema, and why also I feel very connected to it. The fact that it's the kind of films where everybody, we say in French, chacun a ses raisons. It's a quote from Renoir speaking of his own films.
La règle du jeu.
Like everybody has his own reasons why they are doing so, and in your films you would never look to the people in a way that you want to. Say this is good or this is bad, again, like that you would be with one against the other. You are with each of your character, whether they would be man and woman. And that's also the way I make my films. In my films, there are no bad human beings, you know. I know they do exist, but I'm not interested in showing them or making films out of them. I'm more interested in showing the complexity of the feelings and of each people. And that's why I feel as much empathy for each of my character in each of my film, and I do feel the same about your film, and I think it really determines, it's like a red line that really makes a difference with a lot of other films where you have stories that are told in a way that they want to show you that this is a character fighting against another, and you have to feel empathy for this character, but not for this one. It's a different approach, I think, to life and to cinema.
You can really feel it in both of your films. This love that you have for everyone, you know, and it's really, it's really wonderful. And
Thank you.
I'm curious because and I think also something I think is very interesting. This And I think it is something that cinema can do very well, where you have like this, you know, as opposed to having to cover a lot of ground in terms of story, you maybe have one truthful moment. And it's because that's how I think we, like you're saying, we experience life also. And there are these moments of clarity, you know, in our lives when suddenly everything becomes clear in a way, and then it goes back into fog, you know. But then, and then it's like, oh no, now this thing that happened here is like the essence of our relationship, or this is the essence of something in your life. And I think that's really well done in both of your films, to focus on these moments, these portraits, which makes me think about your writing process. And I know you, so we start with you, because you always work with Eskil. Or
yes, I do.
Yeah. And so how does that work? How do you?
We sit in a room, and we sit a long time, and we discuss things. And because we're both obsessed with movies and watching movies, a lot of the time we can spend weeks discussing film, which I think is healthy, because it gets you sort of formally engaged and trying to be specific. And we will go home on a Friday after a whole week of sitting there from in the morning to the afternoon, you know, and just being in the room listening to music, and we feel shamed very often in the beginning and feel that we're without talent and feel awful, and we work ourselves into a state of anxiety. And we just spoke about George Cukor or Eric Romer for a whole week, and watch the films in the night and come back in the morning and talk about movies.
And you both do the writing?
No, so this is the thing. And then when we get really into, especially me, when I get so anxious that my career is going to be over, things start having value. Because I feel so awful about myself. And I have to go there every time. And I'm about to do it again this fall, probably before Christmas. And it happens. And like, I need to go to a place where I feel that I really lose it. It's terrible. And then I start being like, okay, survival mechanism. Okay, so we got something here, don't we? And then things start getting value. So, and then we start structuring it and creating the scenes. And then we've learned, in the beginning we both tried to write. And that I discovered I'm not a great writer. So Eskil writes out scenes, and I come in the afternoon and we look at it together and change it. And so Eskil is really the smart one. He's the writer. He's the one that's able to put it down on paper. I have huge anxiety for that process. So I'm not as good as Mia, because she can actually do the whole thing herself.
But I wonder, in your relationship with Eskil, do you feel like, okay, he's a writer, he writes a scene and then you rewrite them or whatever, but do you have the feeling that, is it a like 50-50 process? Like, what I mean is that, is it both of you creating a story with both of your sensibilities, or is it about him trying to get you to find out what you have to say or want to say?
I feel that we are both very engaged in it, but that I maybe have more concern about my getting ideas from reality, and Eskil is somehow sometimes different, but it varies, you know? Like in the new film, for example, I'll give you an example. In the first part, the main character, Julie, is about to turn 30, and she goes with her slightly older boyfriend to a cabin with his friends. And they are all quite established, they have kids, they know what they want with their life, and she feels very exposed and feels like she doesn't fit into that grown-up life. And some arguments break out between the couple, and you're kind of looking at the discrepancy between the ideals of what we think is romantic life and the reality of it with children. And I mean, Eskil and I have both been at that cabin. And
where you filmed the scene?
No, not quite. But like in the fictionalized version, and it doesn't mean that we're trying to make a fool of our friends or either of us. But I have at times, you know, I have had experience of bringing someone who's a bit younger to that, you know. So in a way, we help each other sometimes. So, but it varies. It varies. Yeah.
What? Do you have to drive yourself to brink of anxiety and dark place to? Yeah,
it's awful. That must be reassuring for you to hear that. But no, really, it's difficult. It's never easy. I think I tried to speak a bit about that in Bergman Island. The ironic thing here is that Bergman Island was maybe, and it's still a mystery for me, really why, but was maybe the one film that I struggled the less with, that maybe because it was a film about how you struggle. So maybe that was so cathartic to actually make a film dealing with that I wrote the film with. It was actually easier, and there was more pleasure maybe involved in that writing than in other ones. But yes, it's doubts over doubts over doubts. And at the end, comes a story, and you don't know what is the miracle that made it possible that you overcame all these doubts and that you were able to. What I feel also very close to in terms of how I write, even though I write mostly alone, but it's the fact that my way of writing is not about really creating a storyline or something. It's more about these scenes that I want to tell. You know, these things that I want to show. Just something. I want to. Oh, there is and it's these scenes that are full of meaning for me. I maybe don't even know why, but it's haunted. There is a lot involved in these scenes that are not even scenes sometimes, even images or moments, and I just put them one after the other, and at the end I see if there is a story or a film that comes out of it. But it's really not so rational and well thought, you know. It's afterwards, once the film is done and you got questions, and then you try to pretend that it was all,
it has meaning,
it has meaning, but it's not predetermined. It's not well, I hope it doesn't mean that there is no construction and no thoughts on the rhythm, but it's just that I think my approach to it is very impressionist. You know, it's really about moments and
instinct.
It's very intuitive. But I do struggle. I'm full of anxiety as well, and most of the time there is a lot of time for me before I actually go to the desk and start writing. I think the most important for me is all the time I spend beforehand thinking about it,
mapping it out, like what it is, what is the essence, what is it that you don't want to lose, to figuring that out. But I have to also say that we're both filmmakers that care a lot about characters and the sense of truth or life relation to the image, to what's happening in the film, the characters. But let's talk about this freely, and you might feel different, but I assume, so one of the hard things to do in film is how you treat time in a narrative. Like, how do you stretch or condense time so it becomes one fluid motion of a human development, if you do character stories, that is, particularly. And a masterpiece like Eden, where you know, seriously, it's a really great film. And you manage to stretch, I think we meet him at a rave. It's a film about a young man who discovers house music and makes that his life. But in a way, he stops developing sides of himself because he clings to one side of himself. And it's the journey of 20 years, from his 18 till his late 30s, isn't it? Yes. Where he actually finally dares open up to something else in his life in a way, and he feels trapped by his identity that he's chosen early on, and things that I can identify with a lot, you know, and maybe you too, because we decided to be filmmakers at some point. But you managed then, formally, again going back to writing, to have a 20-year story that you, like a magician in front of our eyes, show us bits of. And we just like, oh, that happens, and that's truthful. And then a little bit later, he loses a friend, and then he meets a girl, and oh, that didn't work out. And before we know it, in a period of a couple of hours, you have taken us on a journey of 20 years that feels completely coherent. I mean, at the end, I'm like, oh, I aged with this man. Jesus, he's 40 now. And I saw him out in the woods at a rave when he was 18. Maybe taking some drugs and listening to some music and discovering DJing, and suddenly, you know, and you take us on that, and that's a magic trick. It's a formal magic trick that you've done, and it's seamless. And people don't understand how difficult that is. I do, because I write and I make movies, and I'm like, oh, Jesus, you know, and I go out and I have to unpack with my two friends that we're all have at some point been DJs, by the way, as well. And we're all like crying, and we're like, oh, we're 42. What the hell happened? And and I call other friends of mine, and they have to unpack your film. They have to unpack 20 years afterwards in a bar and go, what have we done? And so it's a magic trick. And to write that and to create that is a formal, crafty, difficult, beat by beat, sentence by sentence, shot by shot process. Where and the reason I'm saying is because I realize when we sit here, we talk about it as, oh, it's life and we make movies, but it's actually really hard formal work.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if you want to elaborate on those 20 years that you were able to shrink in front of our eyes, or another example from your films.
By the way, just to add that I think my favorite moment of that kind of time is when they take a cab, Paul and Louise take a cab, and when they arrive at their destination, 2 years have passed. It's like they arrive at the club.
Good example.
And it's really like you think, oh wait, but you completely believe it. But somehow I've never seen this before, and it was very seamless. Yes. So.
No, exactly. It's a time machine.
Yeah.
But thank you for all you said. I don't know. I don't know if I was so aware of what I was doing when I wrote Eden. I mean, I wanted it to be. I knew from the start that I wanted the film have this stretch of 20 years. And actually, at first, I wanted it to be 2 films. And I struggled quite hard actually during 2 years in order to save that project and I still regret somehow that it couldn't be really 2 films, but it was even longer.
I'm so glad it's not.
Really?
Yes, and then I'll let you continue. I'm so glad it's not because it is one sitting. Yeah. It's a feature film where you exactly have that pressure of 20 years in one sitting as you sit in the seat. Anyway, please.
But there was this ambition, I mean, to really make a very large, I don't know how to say that, open, epic film, but about a man that was not a star of the French Touch. That's what I liked so much about the project, is that with that kind of scale, 20 years, the French Touch, becoming famous DJ, you would think the film would be about the Daft Punk, and actually it wasn't at all. It was about this guy who at the end doesn't really become famous and loses himself and loses the meaning of it all. And this man happened to be inspired by my brother. When I started writing this film and I wrote it with him, it's actually the only film that I wrote with somebody, and it was with my brother. He was at a moment of his life where he could look back for the first time, because he had been this guy and he had been involved in this for more than 20 years and suffering from not being able to become an adult, basically, and had this feeling of being stuck in his youth in a way that it became mortifère. But if the film was possible for me to write, it was really because he was slowly, finally, going out of this. It had been he had been into such difficulties, and it was very moving for me to see him finally become a writer, which he became later, and finally be able to grow up. But there was so much melancholy involved that I could connect with too. And anyway, so that's how I decided to write this film, and I thought I should involve him. But about the fact that I wrote this film that you think is a challenge, 20 years, it was part of the project from the start, but it's not like I had a formal project. Well, the formal project was to write a very large and ambitious film, but I wasn't so much aware how original or difficult it was to be able to write that story that way and stay with that character that would age, but with one actor who would look young until the end of the film, and still we would have to feel that 20 years had gone. I think the time was just part of the film from the start. I think time passing is part of is belongs to the way I make film, actually. I
It
think
does,
all of my films, they deal with passing of time, so it's almost organic to me in the way I write that passing of time would be involved.
But maybe that's your talent as well. This is the irony sometimes with artists, is that the thing that they do best is what they're maybe not so aware of. Maybe this comes natural to you.
Or the thing that they feel is a weakness to them, like we talked about it earlier, but like I wished so much that I would make a film that would happen within one day, just like you did, or to be able to I wish I would be able to capture passing of time, but without having to actually show all these years and all these moments and being able to feel time just within a moment.
But maybe I think you would do that. Well, I think that's the kind of trick you could have up your sleeve if you have a crisis with the project, is if you did a day. Well, you know, I mean, it's actually the freedom of doing a story within one day, like I did with Oslo, August 31st.
Yes, that's why I enjoyed so much about it, because it was also about passing of time, but you managed to capture that with this very strong formal idea of keeping it into one day.
Yeah, but you see it in certain films like La Notte by Antonioni manages to tell a whole story of two lives and a relationship in one night. It's very, and you see Agnes Varda's Cleo from 5 to 7. Has anyone seen this film? It's really worth watching. It's a pop singer in Paris is told that she maybe has lethal cancer and she has to wait for a few hours to get the result. And she walks around and her whole life is changing in those two. I mean, that trick you should do once, because if you did it, you would find some really interesting, that day I would want to watch. So it's, I've thought about it again actually, whether that's like a formal, again, having a concept of time that could liberate you as a writer and allow you to do the small things and look at small things and see whether they have value, that everyday situation stuff.
But actually in your last film you do deal with passing of time too, even though it's not many years, but it's still...
It is kind of 5 years almost that we follow her, yeah.
But I think also you have, Joachim, you have in your, for example in Oslo, August 31st, yes it's one day, but there's this time is stretched out in a different way because it's such an internal film, and you know, one of my favorite scenes, I think, ever in any movie is the cafe scene in that film.
Thank you.
So the film, for those of you that don't know, follows a young man who is a recovering drug addict in rehab, and he has a one-day leave to go into the city to run errands, and this is the day that the film is set in. And he goes to a cafe and he's meeting his sister, isn't he? Well, yeah,
He's waiting,
and while he's waiting, he starts to listen to other people's voices, and he starts to hone in onto these conversations on other tables, and it becomes like he starts hearing things that he realistically, you know, maybe couldn't hear, you know, like 10 tables away, or. But somehow it just becomes about how you perceive other people and how you perceive the lives of others, and there's this gap, there's this, you know, sad gap between him and the others, and so there's longing in it also. There's like longing to sort of listen to these stories, and then you use this. So, and I've seen this in other films by you also. There's this technique that I had never seen in films where it's like, you know, I didn't know that following someone's thought process could be so emotionally moving and cinematic, because and it has to do with how you use sound. And just bear with me, this is connected to the time element, the time point, because somehow by having, you know, we're with the characters, you know, their bodies, they're sitting in a place, but then, you know, they may be talking, and then somehow the conversation stops in the video and they're not talking anymore, but it continues in the audio. And like in this cafe scene, he's listening to people, and then he's looking outside and he sees this woman who goes home. So it's almost like he's imagining her life, and we follow his thoughts. And this technique makes, I think technically is what makes it so internal in a way, because you're kind of literally kind of going into that in-between space of body, of, you know, mind and matter, or like body and mind. When did this, how did you come up with this? Like when did you,
no, but
when
honestly,
did you start using
this thing that you're describing is something that It's something I'm very, very interested in. I'm interested in this sort of stream of consciousness possibility of cinema, which is very, very formal in its tradition. You see it in early montage movies with Eisenstein, how he doesn't make it through a subject, but he makes it polemical. So he would cut between the worker being hit when they are demonstrating by the military or the police officer, and he would cut to someone beating an animal and make a metaphoric cut. And it's quite intellectual the way he did it, but the more he did it, like in Potemkin, you could see that slowly it became philosophical, like how stillness and movement was at play. And he was exploring basics of cinema. And then if you jump forward to Alain Resnais, for example, who did a film I keep thinking is really one of the biggest masterpieces of cinema, which is the Hiroshima Mon Amour, because he managed to make it subjective. So the montage and the formal break between the images becomes human. It starts breathing with Marguerite Duras' writing, and you get a sense that it's a film about deep grief and a human individual grief, but suddenly also put into the context of history. It's this insanely complicated and sophisticated film that really goes beyond almost anything that's made in cinema. So those are my ideals in a way. And then I'm much more from that humanist, realist, present day, modern, or present day, contemporary type of modern cinema. So I've been trying to find the formal ways of continuing that tradition of showing how we are both present, but at the same time always somewhere else. Like as we're thinking about something and something reminds me and you say this, and then when you think about something, and you know, we are always on several levels, and try to find specific ways formally to do that. And mind you, I grew up with my father he's a pensioned now, but he's a sound designer for films. So I'm quite concerned with like how sound works in movies. And the biggest power that Hollywood forgets, one of the biggest powers of cinema is silence. The moment you have people on the hook and they're looking at your movie and you draw it down like, and you feel everyone in the seat going, it's like stopping a car. Like to pull people in and out with sound is a physical experience that's very unconscious. So it's close to that kind of dreamlike thing. So I think there are but it also becomes a technique to try to get people. And it's funny, I remember I went to the National Film School and they had a seminar only about transitions. And the big transition that they were talking about was how do people start song and dance in musicals? But I learned a lot from that, because if you look at it, it's the moment when like, and then it's like, zabadee, and half the audience is like, oh, this is awful. Or some filmmakers manage to make transitions in movies between present and the past. One of the radical things about Hiroshima Mon Amour is it doesn't go like, oh, I remember that evening years ago, and it goes, you know, and then you go back in time. Like there were these ways of doing it, very literally. But then slowly you can start doing a modern film language where these things are much more fluid, present and past, imagination and reality, the inner and the outer. I think those transitions are what's really exciting about movies.
Yeah, and you can tell in your new film, you know, and just watching your films, you seem to be very sort of interested in exploring the medium and the sort of the boundaries and how important is that to you?
This is also like the Eskil and me being the nerds talking about movies. You know, like we're like, I have an idea. Like a stupid example, I stop rambling, but a stupid example that I'm really proud of, and this sounds like I'm a sports person, like wanting to achieve something, but it kind of is. It's a bit of vanity, to be honest with you.
But I have to say that I feel like it's still serving your story. You know,
it must. That's the only way we're allowing ourselves. But so in Louder Than Bombs, which is being screened later today, there's a scene where a young guy in high school is looking at a girl he's attracted to, and she's reading aloud in class from a text. And the text is about mortality. And her voice becomes his thinking. So her voice becomes his way of thinking. And he starts thinking, led by her voice, about the death of his mother that he misses. And on a plot level, we realize in that scene that we, the audience, know that she committed suicide, but he doesn't know, because he's imagining that it was an accident while she was driving a car. Then he realizes, in that thought process where we start cutting to other moments, that they were playing hide and seek as a child, and he realizes that, I'm older now, so I realized that she must have seen me all along when I thought I was hiding from her. And then he kind of laughs, and there's a moment of something, thinking about his mother, and then he comes back to reality and looks over at the girl that he's attracted to. So I had that idea for years in a drawer. Like, I want to make a voiceover when someone reads something aloud, and it goes on into their thought process. But I didn't know how to use it. And then I realized in this story that it would have a strange Oedipal connection between the passion that he feels as a teenager for this girl and the loss of the mother. So the kind of closet Freudian I am, I was like, that's very interesting. But it couldn't be applied. It would be cold formalism until I finally clicked in, this scene could do that and tell something more. Right? So form to me, of course, it has to be connected to character, but it takes time sometimes to find that connection.
So you find it important to have the sort of the content determining the form of your story?
Or they have to meet. Is the ideal.
I'd just like to get back to that scene you were mentioning before, from the cafe scene. I think this scene really became kind of cult for some directors because of what you explained and the way it was exploring the power of sound in cinema, and it's following a tradition but making it, rethinking it in a way that's very contemporary. But above all, to me, there was something, if there was something so special with that scene, it had to do that to me when I watched the film, and it remained like that later. This scene really was like capturing melancholy, what melancholy is, in a way that I don't know any other film doing. It was, to me, the scene really represents la quintessence, the essence, really. You managed to find a form, a cinematographic form that really captures melancholy in a way that I found both quite unique but very powerful and almost a definitive. Like, it's the one scene, really, to me, about melancholy. And it's all about what you explained before about that scene, but what I also feel about that scene is to me, it's also about how you can have distance to yourself, how you lose yourself. Because you say it's about how you feel distance to the other people because he's listening to them, but at the same time, that makes us feel the distance between them and him. But to me, it's also the reverse. Like, it's also about him, vanishing.
Yeah, it's
like he's there, and instead of film, in any film, you have a man in a cafe, you are with him, and people are pretending to talk, and they are just extras, and we don't listen to them, they are just background. And it was so strong that you actually inverted that process, and like you made something no one did before, meaning you filmed a guy in the cafe, but he disappears among the sounds of the people around him, and you actually go and listen to all the people around him. And to me, that was such a relevant and powerful expression of melancholy that I could connect it with in such a strong way that I think a lot of directors. It was the case for a lot of young directors of our generation, and I think that's part of why that scene really has been a lot, stayed a lot for many people, and there's been so many comments on that scene, and it stays.
Completely agree.
Thank you.
I think it's hard to sit here and, there may be a fifth present somewhere here that we are not talking about Bergman yet.
Oh, no.
And another distant Nordic uncle, I think what you did with your recent film, is a very brave thing, and I think it's a lot of filmmakers would be terrified of going to that place and making a film, and I think the film, isn't really about Bergman, but I think you're using it in a very clever way, or using him and his work to sort of reflect on your characters and their relationships, and I think it's just incredibly well handled. It's done with humor, it's done with respect, but you know, he doesn't get away too easily. He's also being critical. So I was wondering, you know, you were going to tell us a story how you met, and if you want to talk about your relationship to the works of Bergman.
I was hoping we would not get into that.
You can hold your thought, and then I'll just tell the story, and then you can.
You speak better about Bergman than I do.
No. I've heard you talk about Bergman, and you're. The funny thing, like, yeah, no, I'd love you to say something about Bergman. We met at Fårö, the island, the Bergman Island.
The two of you?
Yes, for the first time. I had been admiring her cinema for a long time.
Yeah.
We had a shared friend called Michael Ers who had tried to get us together for a lunch in Paris. It didn't happen. You know, so I've been longing, and then suddenly I heard I was a guest at the Bergman Week, which is an event I would encourage everyone to go to. It's really interesting. People from around the world meet and talk about Bergman for a week, watch films.
Wow.
It's great fun, and while people are crying while they're smiling, you know. We love him, but it's so hard. And in the middle of that, suddenly I realized that the wonderful Mia Hansen-Løve is there to research a film she's doing on Fårö. This was now then what became Bergman Island. We had a dinner, and we met and talked. And in the middle of the context of the seriousness of Bergman and the Bergman Week, we had a lovely dinner with some friends and laughed a lot, I remember, and it was a joyful thing. And yeah.
Did you do the Bergman Safari? Does that
Does that
Yeah.
exist?
Yeah.
Bergman
Of
Safari?
course, yes. I couldn't invent such a thing.
And it's called that?
Yes. Just I changed the bus. I found a more fancy bus somehow than the one they have. That's the only thing that I changed.
Yeah.
I know I can. The film can sound or look critical sometimes towards Bergman. I know there is humor. Well, I hope there is. Or
there is.
I think there is. I may be less critical towards Bergman than my film is, actually. I'm a huge admirer of his films. I have been for a long time now, although I don't think I discovered the films of Bergman so early. I must have been in my 20s, and then it took me 10, 15 years to really feel like I knew the work of Bergman. It's not like I watched 50 films of Bergman in a row when I was in my 20s. Not at all. It was very progressive. But I think the importance of Bergman in my life as a director only grew up year after year, and still continues actually to grow up even after the film is done. I think it has to do. It's hard to really say that. I have to say in English. I mean, really, it's not humility. I mean it. It's difficult because I don't have all the words with me that I would like to use. But I think it has to do with his integrity that I find really unique, with his independence and freedom that he preserved his whole life to a degree that's really extraordinary. And of course it has to do with the film themselves, the way he films human beings, relationships, the nudity, you know, that he achieves in his way of portraying people. He's not afraid. He's not scared of showing things as they are, and I admire that a lot. Although I don't pretend that my films do the same kind of things. I don't think I'm a Bergman hater. I mean, I think you can admire a director immensely and be looking for your. I mean, I hope there are some values, or you know, I hope that the cinema that I do is the same kind. I don't know if we can say kind, but it's not that. I hope that the kind of values that my films carry are not the opposites than the ones that the films of Bergman carry, in terms of how you look at people, in terms of how sincere or truthful you're trying to be. But I never try to imitate his style. I mean, I have my own quest. They are my things that I'm trying to say, and I guess I respect him too much to try to make, you know, small Bergman films or something like that. And also, there is this darkness about his films that I'm not capable of. I need more light in my films. I think the films that I do impact my own life in many ways. I think Bergman Island deal with that, the way you have a constant dialogue to your own work and how it helps you cope with your own life. And for me, it's still a mystery how Bergman was able to look at life with such cruelty and lucidity, and was not afraid to make films that were not bringing so much light sometimes, and that he actually enjoyed it.
Yeah.
You know, he probably did, because otherwise he wouldn't do it this way. That it was liberating for him to even tell stories where there were no way out, and whereas I need to tell stories where somehow there is some light, some hope, direction, you know. Yeah. So that is the kind of relationship I have to Bergman work. But I should maybe say also, it's not only about his films. I think it's also the figure itself, like his presence. I'm a little bit in love with Bergman, I think, somehow. Like I could say I'm in love with François Truffaut, for instance. You know, it's this kind of directors where it's not only about, it's not only a rational approach, objective approach about what you think about their films and how great they are. It's also a voice, a presence. I mean, I could spend hours watching making of on the films of Bergman. I enjoy, I don't only enjoy his films, I enjoy looking at him on his set, working with people. You know, there is something about the old character that I'm fascinated by, and that is maybe the most difficult thing to explain.
Symbolically, his seat is left empty in the screening room. You know, I think that shows, you know, your respect for him. You know,
absolutely. I'm so happy we tricked you into talking about Bergman. It's great.
What is your relationship to Bergman?
It's interesting. We could start like somewhere else, because we could start where you left off, which is that is he a good director to look up to? Yes and no. It's complicated. He's the prototype male auteur with all his women and all his actors, you know, and actresses more than anything. So in a way, he's a double bind for me as a male director. He's the man that I grew up thinking one should be as a director in a way, yet cautious of the slip and slide. You know, I went to his. I'm talking about the person Bergman now. I went I was a guest of honor at the Bergman Week. It was a great honor, and I was very proud because I admire him tremendously as a filmmaker, very, very much. But there's a side of him of admiration which had to do with power and technique and who he was as a man, which I realized early on that I couldn't be and didn't want to be in a way. But there was also the side of him as the philosopher that made a lot of different types of films, which is what you're talking about. Like, Bergman made some films that I don't think are great, and that's very consoling. Like, he was exploring, because he's not like, if you look at another hero of mine, if you look at people like Kubrick or Tarkovsky, they never made a bad film, I think. So
but they made so much fewer films.
I know. Like Tati, certain directors were like just. They were masterpiece directors, and certain directors are oeuvre directors. And he's an oeuvre director.
Yeah, and that's what I enjoy so much about him too, actually, that he could fail, you know, that he was trying so many things, that he was constantly writing, and he wasn't trying to make only masterpieces. I admire Stanley Kubrick immensely too, but I would never feel as so moved or the same kind of connection or attraction. Although I admire him maybe as much, you know, but I like the fact that Bergman would not wait 7 years until he was sure he was doing the next masterpiece. I like the fact that it was just, for him, more important than doing a masterpiece was to just keep on writing and creating and trying and expressing himself non-stop, and that's a relationship to making films and to creation that that's probably the one I feel more attracted to, as being a way of living. To me, making film is not only about making great pieces of art. It's an art of living, and I think it was, and there was this thing about Bergman, and it was really like an extension of himself, and it was just the way he lived. He lived making films. And so that's why I say I also admire the man, maybe not as a lover, and not when we go about his relationship to women and power, and of course that's not the part of him that I admire the most, but I admire the way he made a life where it's a constant, it's organically connected with his writing constantly from the beginning to the end of his life as a director.
No, he's a magical character in a way, and I think I agree, and I shouldn't say anything simple negative about him. I didn't know him, and I know that he seemed to have also been a very loving person who helped people, but he had that ability, supposedly, of coming into a room and being the big seducer, and I don't think he would be able to make those films he did without also using that force, quite forcefully. So it's nothing I want to say something simple about, just to correct maybe the notion of me being critical of everything about those other things. Honestly, art is messy, living is messy, and Bergman was ruthlessly concerned with the integrity of his art. And who knows what that takes, that's an individual choice you make film by film and step by step, and I'm intrigued by that. I think he's an interesting character. And I went there when I was at Bergman Week. There was a psychoanalyst who was doing, and I hope she finished her project because it was exciting. Someone might know, but she was looking at all of the books in his library, tremendous library, and analyzing he wrote in his books in the margin of all the novels and all the texts he was writing all the time. And she was analyzing many of those side texts that he was creating to try to understand him as a person, psychoanalytically. So that was fascinating. So we keep being curious about the myth, But to go to the filmmaker Bergman clearly and say something about that, I think there's a tremendous tradition in Nordic cinema for the close-up. Dreyer, Jeanne d'Arc is the iconic close-up film of all time. Bergman also, the paradox of the close-up. We get close to someone in cinema, more close than in real life. I've tried to look at people very close like that, but they don't seem bigger than on a big screen. It's unique. It's not like a close-up on TV. It's something else. Close-up in cinema is unique. It's like a part of our art form that is quite, we can't see anywhere else. You go to Times Square in New York, where we live close to our hotel, you see posters that are that big, but they're not close-up usually. It's like a full person in a suit or something. So it's unique, right? And Bergman used the paradox of the close-up, which is that you are pretending to be close to someone, yet you are not, which is the theme of many of his films. Why siblings who should love each other don't love each other. Why couples, like in Scenes from a Marriage, should be transparent and fluid as an organism, but they are also deep enemies and hate each other. Like the paradox of the proximity of humans to each other is illustrated formally also by the paradox of his close-ups. Like you will look at his characters closer than any other director, and you will empathize yet feel like a stranger. Like that doubleness in Bergman movies is a pure discovery of an artistic strand of cinema that he's done more so than anyone, I think. So he is, and I think both you and I care about our close-ups. I used to be ashamed because I thought there was a virtue, kind of Bresson, you should never cut back to the same image twice, or shot reverse is just something Americans do because they're sloppy or something. No, I like shot reverse, actually. I don't want to do it all the time. But when you can really be in between people, close to the eye line, and the editing is the art, like who's listening, what are they reacting, and you know some of it, but some is hidden. You have to fill yourself in, like what are they feeling? All that intimate space stuff that you can do in movies when you spend time on characters. Bergman is kind of the master of that, and very inspiring.
Shot reverse is pretty much infinite in terms of how much you can say and how deep you can go, and I think it would be very naive to think that it's conventional. I mean, it can be extremely conventional, but it can be the opposite and conventional. It really depends how you use it and how what is your way of doing them. And yes, I of course I'm interested in the close-up and how to use them. I do very few, actually, and that also tells you about what I was saying earlier. Like I do love them in the films of Bergman, and they fascinate me. But when it's about my own films, I have my own thoughts. I would not just do close-ups because I love them in the films of Bergman. I think when you define yourself as a director, it's a lot about finding the right distance, and it's not like I do only I don't know how to say that in English, des plans moyens, medium size. But it's just that in my film you have medium close-ups, but when there is a close-up, it has to be a very specific moment. It has to lead. In some of my films, certain scene leads to like that one close-up, but it's gonna be one at some point for some reason. I wouldn't stay like 40 minutes on the face like Bergman did, but I think that's interesting just because I think each director defines himself according to. I mean, I think the distance that you have to your character, how you use distance and different distances, really tells you about how you define yourself and your cinematic language.
Well put, I agree.
Yeah.
As it's something to look at with filmmakers.
Yeah.
Are there any questions from you?
We've talked a lot, so you have the right to be.
They're processing.
We can end it here. So.
While you're thinking, if there's no question right now, this talk about close-ups made me think about your work with the actors, which is also really amazing in your films. And you have said in an interview that you don't like to talk so much about backstory, that you prefer to, look at concrete things that the characters do. Can you talk a little bit about your approach with, how you work with your actors?
Yes, I've always had the feeling that I was finding the right tone or the truth of a scene while we are really on set, and that it comes really from the rhythm, from nuances we find while we are working, but that it's never thanks to whatever we have said to each other before that it is right on the set. I think if it happens the way you want it to happen, or if you find this thing that ultimately brings, the truth to the scene that was not there in the script, because it's never there in the script. It happens or doesn't happen later on the set. But if you find it, it has to do with your work with the actor in a very concrete way, I find. But maybe it has to do also with the fact that with how my scripts are written, they are very impressionist. You don't have these long scenes with people talking to each other. I wish there was, like in the films of Bergman, but my scripts are written in a way where it's often a lot of short scenes with a lot of changes of location, and they depend on the light, on the mood. They are very impressionist, really, in the way they are written, and it doesn't really make sense to rehearse them, because if you don't have... I don't know why my films were always looked at as films where people talk a lot, maybe because it's very auteur and French, so people immediately think it's very talkative. But actually it's not that much. There is not so many dialogues in my films. There are, but it's not, and so they are pretty much impossible to really rehearse, and that's why also I work in a way where I have to be so much present on the set in order to find it, because I cannot find beforehand exactly, and I don't believe that much in the psychological intentions, like the fact that explaining the character intellectually would really bring it closer to. I do talk with the actors, but I don't. I think it's really a matter. It's really a matter of rhythm and of nuances to me, more than of explanations.
And the dialogue is written, or is it improvised?
No, it is
to some extent, or
it is really written, and there is quite few improvisation in my films actually, except when I work with kids. Then when I work with kids, it's often much more open. But otherwise, I do. Not that I want to stick like as if it was sacred, or that the words, but I find that often improvisation leads to a lot of repetitions and commenting on what you are doing. It's rarely good, I find, or it has to be very well encadré. You have to give a really strict direction to it, I think, if you want to get a good improvisation.
But so you don't rehearse before shooting?
No.
But how do you prepare with the actors? I mean, I guess it's a lot about creating trust and relationship.
I think it's much more about that. It's much more than preparing the actual scenes. I think it's preparing your relationship to the actor in a way that they will trust you, you will trust them. And I think all the best that I got from the actors since I ever made film, I got from the fact that we were trusting each other. That's really the one thing I believe in, really. And that's why I envy so much you working with Anders 3 times, and the fact that you have this long-distance relationship with him, because I do love all the actors I've been working with, but for some reasons I keep on changing my alter egos. I don't know if it's a matter of curiosity, because I want to, I'm just curious to work with another actor and another, or if it's because of the different projects that the different films I've written. But I wish so much I had my own Antoine Douanel like you have with Anders. That's my dream, actually. Because it must be so nice to, continue that conversation you have with one actor and really build something with him. And also, it's something I enjoy so much about your last film, to meet again with Anders, and it's about him in the film, but it's also about him as, bringing the soul of the previous films with him. And it really, it makes the film bigger, I find, too, that he brings that with him and that history of your previous films. But I could never decide about it.
But what about you? Do you rehearse with actors, or?
I do. But I sympathize with a lot of what you're saying, actually. I just have a different approach technically to it. I think trust is the essence as well. So, but I want there to be a trial and error. I find that when I cast actors, sometimes they are very experienced, sometimes they're not, but they're all very, very anxious. And most of them think that they're going to be revealed as the wrong choice. So if any of you are directors, be aware, the moment you give it to them, then a week later they're going to have oh my God, he's going to realize I suck. That's what all actors feel. And I feel that a bit too. So it's good to train together a bit and be oh, we're okay together. Listen, and to show them that, I made the right choice. Trust me, I did. I love you. This is, I really dig you in this part. For real. I've never cast people that I feel half-assed about. I've held open spots in my films up until very late. Because I cannot go on set with people I don't, even in micro, small parts. I need to feel that I can work with them and they're right for the role. And I work with a lot of weird people. But I find my love with them.
How do you find out that they're right and you can work with them?
Extensive casting. I spend my casting budget is ridiculous. I often have several people working, and I meet people again and again and again, and then I cast them, and I feel ashamed sometimes about people that I've brought in 10 times, and then I say sorry. And it's really, but it's one of the main things I do as a director, is spend time figuring out how I put my cast together.
And it's important for you to meet them and be with them in the room.
In the room. Often with the casting director, and we try scenes. But it's also to see and feel them, and often takes 3 times before they relax. Even at some point they go through this you want to see me again? Fuck you. Good. Now I'm starting to get a sense of what you're I don't do this for all the small parts, but I need to get them engaged somehow. Herbert, who plays not Renate, the lead, or Anders, but the third big part in my recent film, he said at some point he wanted to beat me up if I didn't give him, but at the same time he was very humble, and he was I must have this now, But and then we have rehearsals, and I film them. I have an assistant film everything, and I never try to make perfect scenes. I always just try to explore and talk and share, and it becomes extremely personal. I have a lot of time with each actor individually, and then I start pairing them up, and we do scenes. And I talk a lot about what I feel about the characters. But it's important not to be the smartest person in the room, I've learned. To ask questions, to bring my curiosity, my wonder, my unresolved issues to them, and ask them to help me figure it out. So they will take ownership of the character. That's very important. It's not just a fake thing I do to charm them. It's actually I really need them to have authority. So on set, they'll say, I think actually this is, I go, great, good, you own this. This is you now. And sometimes it's also physical things they have to train. I find that a lot of my characters have to learn a profession or things with their hands, and I ask them to train that. So I don't either do round table reading, I don't do all the scenes, but I take essential scenes and we work on them. And then I film it, I rewrite dialogue with Eskil once more. And he looks at it and we're like, that whole chunk we don't need, but we need something else. Like, and you start realizing through rehearsal that, like for example, in my most recent film, I'm balancing a woman's perception on two men, how she perceives them. And through the rehearsals, I realize how I also need to balance them differently than in the script. Like I needed extra scenes with Anders. And then we kind of write those quickly and try to get them into the schedule and stuff. So it's just like a safety net to try to get to know my material a little bit better. On set, I'm extremely planned. Like everything is super planned.
Because then you have made all the decisions before.
Like I have a whole plan of the mise en scène and the time, and I don't want to go over. It's like I say to my team, when the actors are out, behave like you're changing a wheel of a Formula One car. Like I want it extremely efficient and quiet. And when we bring the actors on, it's like I forget time. So that's when I use the time. And then I forget all the plans we made with the actors, of course, like you. Like I really don't know until we're doing it. And I want to try to push it so that there's an event in front of the camera. And it might turn out very different than the plan, but I need to have that approach and that energy of focus, and then you can let it go on set. That's my way of working.
I'm so happy to hear you say this about a lengthy casting process. I have such actor guilt about keeping them waiting for long. I know there are some actors here in the room. I'm sorry for keeping you waiting long.
But it doesn't mean we don't love you. But you might be good for the next one. That's the truth. You don't want to be, as an actor, cast in the wrong part. No. You don't want it. It's like being in the relationship with someone you love, but you realize we're not working.
It's exactly the same. It's exactly the same.
And it's hell. And it's responsible, actually, to figure it out for everyone. Because so many actors have a bad time on set with directors who didn't choose them for the right reasons. Maybe it's just admiration, idealization, the wrong reasons. Even with quite famous actors, it must be hell if you know that if you come into the project, the film will be made because of money.
And then
it's also a chance for them to get to know you. And maybe they are allowed to say, which actually should be, like, I don't think this is for me, you know? We don't function. So, I'm trying to relieve you of your guilt, because I feel it too. Sorry, actors.
Any questions? No?
Oh, there is.
Somewhere.
There's someone up there.
I see a hand.
Yes.
Wow. I want to ask all of you, actually, because when an Icelandic film is made, there's always sort of a responsibility to portray Iceland or to say something about Iceland, because it's still fairly new here, and I'm sure Ása and Haddi know about this, but Joachim, you made Louder Than Bombs, I think has no Norwegian connection, and then 31st of August, Oslo has a very clear Norwegian connection. And I haven't seen Bergman's Island, but that's obviously set in Sweden, so just how do you approach that somehow differently if you're, making a film about your own society as opposed to somewhere else?
Yeah, good question. Thank you.
Can you repeat for me?
Yeah, no, he's asking about the national relation to our stories in a way. So, like, I shot a film in New York, but I also have done films in Oslo, and how that is. And he says he hasn't seen your film yet, but he knows that it's shot in, which you're absolutely correct about. It's made in Sweden. And how is it? Am I understanding you correctly?
Right? How it's different.
How it's different.
Like
how
how
that
it's
feels.
different to make, like for you make your films in Paris, and then how it's different than to go to Farö and
And it is. You're right. It's a good question. It's hard to answer because the place is the thing itself. It's not a sociological place when it's where you grew up. When I shoot Oslo, I'm sorry, this is a cheesy metaphor, but it's almost like a sculpture takes a material and starts cutting in it. It's that's the city. I don't analyze it. It's like I know that street will have that feeling to me, and I hope when I show it to you, it'll have that feeling to you too, or something in that place will transfer onto the audience. But yes, I was given a really hard time about shooting a film in New York after it was done. It was a year at Cannes. It was the first time I was in main competition, and everyone wanted me to make Oslo August 31st again, I think. This is the problem about having a successful film, is that, and you see it, like with Woody Allen, he makes his masterpiece, Stardust Memories, just after Manhattan and Annie Hall, and like everyone suddenly hates him, and it's, when you make your films, it can be a mess. But I think it was unfair. I think that Louder Than Bombs was really personal to me. But it was personal inside that family dynamic. But since I did it with actors in English and in New York, and people maybe didn't feel it had the same, I don't know, like some sense of their idea of what I should be doing. So looking from the outside, it was different. But shooting around the camera and everything, it was very similar. I have exactly the same way of working. I had Final Cut. I wrote the film and developed it in the same way. Unions in New York are tough, so that was very different. That's a long story I won't get into here, but it was like big part of your budget goes to people who decide that they need to drive your car and they want to take half your budget. So, there are things there that are tricky, but I'm sure there's a lack of specificity in certain elements of that film in its placing because I didn't know New York as well. So there could be that, but then I hope I find specificity in other parts of my narrative, it's not true that, so here's the thing, maybe you're asking as well, are you working with films or are you a filmmaker?
No, but I've written a lot about films.
Yeah, you know a lot about films. So the fact is that Louder Than Bombs was made with European financing. So I had Isabelle Huppert living in New York, and that gave point to the Euroimage. And Gabriel Byrne is actually Irish, even though he's considered American. And so before you knew it, I actually had like a film that had a European component, so I could be allowed from European funding to have control, and then some American finance as well on top of it. But yeah.
But I guess that gave you freedom as well.
Completely.
Yeah.
We need to really, really fight right now, people, for the European financing model we have, which we have worked within all our lives, which is a way, in a strange, I'm saying it to my American colleagues who have to work from private finance or streamers, that in a way, I feel my responsibility as a creative person is to do a film as personal as I can. And through that, be as specific as I can for the audience. That's my role in society. That's what the financing is about, to be personal, to take a chance and have an integrity. Whereas in the idea of giving an audience what they want, well, what do I want? I want someone to be very personal and cinematic about what they do. So, we need financing to be sustained that way. And the co-production system we have, the Euroimage, the local government money, all that stuff matters. It really matters right now. And we don't know when we come out of the pandemic how the world is going to look.
No.
We don't know if all the wonderful things that we've done together about being cautious, keeping distance, washing our hands, all that internalization of rules, a part of those habits and rules have become about not remembering we can go to a cinema on a Tuesday. And no politician is going to tell us to do it again. So as a society, we need to re-engage with that. And that's my slight worry, that the habits will... cinema will survive. It survived television, VHS, but we need to fight politically as well to sustain the types of films that take a risk in an environment we're heading into where everyone's going to be so fucking scared. So that's very important, I think, right now.
Yeah.
And that's the European model,
So
actually.
you feel like the pandemic has given a lot of power to the streamers?
Absolutely. And to the people who deliver pizza on your door. You know, there's the gourmet restaurants that are out of business. So we got to keep having both. Streamers are cool too. It's good that they can deliver something. And it's funny to see that the streamers are heading towards feature film format again, a lot. It's not just TV shows. So I don't know.
It comes back to integrity also, and I think that sometimes you see really interesting ideas in these streaming services. Like, this could be really great, but except that it was done in like 5 minutes, with with so little, I don't think you should always set out to make a masterpiece or something, but somehow I find that regrettable, that you see great ideas sort of smurðar, like spread out very thinly, in a sense.
But it's a
and
fact,
no ambition in the cinematography or the medium in a way. It's
and in dramaturgy, as we started out talking. Because I hear that, I'm sure if you're Sorrentino or something, you can do your own film for Netflix. But for a lot of people who work with streamers at the moment, they're getting very good at algorithms, reading how people perceive. So you got to do this or that within the first 3 minutes. You got to do this or that within the first 10 minutes. You got to have a cliffhanger if it's a TV show. Like even trailers now of 2 minutes have a trailer for the trailer at the beginning of the trailer. Have you noticed?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like we are in a time where everything must happen in the first 6 seconds,
Yeah.
or you'll flip on your Instagram,
Yeah.
and it's affecting dramaturgy. Maybe 1 in a million will make something incredibly artistic, sophisticated in this perspective.
Yeah.
But all the other millions won't. You know, it's a hard place to be a human being.
Yeah.
You don't have time to draw your breath
No.
before
Yeah,
an event.
yeah.
No.
So the sense of contemplation around images is
Yeah.
threatened at the moment. So we need to like fight back a bit.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I think we're getting close to the time limit. Do we have time for one question, or is it basically over? It's over. Okay.
Wow, it's
Wow.
been wonderful talking to you. Really,
Thank you.
really
Yes.
generous of you to come and share your ideas and processes.
So great.
And I've
And
learned
you-
a lot, I have to say.
Yeah, me
And
too. And I hope
Yeah.
many of you can
Yeah.
come to tonight's screening. And,
Yeah.
And tomorrow is
I-
your film, Bergman Island, tomorrow, right?
Yeah, and the festival is also showing some of your previous work as well. So, you know, look out for that
Yeah.
and see it on the big screen. Now you have the
Yes.
chance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.